All right, Matthew, we are live.
William.
Checking back in.
Yeah.
Pacing strategies.
Yeah.
Pacing 101. Besides power meters, this must be your favorite topic.
Yeah. Usually when I get to lecture on pacing, I say it's like the third best day of my life
Oh, yeah?
every year, and it gets better every year, So I love talking about pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we might as well start off. The first one I want to talk about is just general pacing strategies, and I'll throw that up on the screen so everyone can see it and refer to what we're talking about. All right. We've got positive, negative, even, parabolic. Matt, tell me what they mean.
Yeah. So you need to bear in mind that this isn't actually pace, right? So this is power output. So this is the effort that you're putting out. So if you look at the first graph, positive pacing, that means that's when you start out really hard and then you kind of reduce the power output that you can do as you go through the event. This is actually what most people do. They use positive pacing, which means they get slower as they go. They start out really hard. Negative pacing means you get faster as you go. So that's really, really rare. It's really hard to get faster as you go. Even pacing strategy, that's probably, one of my favorite pacing strategies, where you just keep an even effort the whole time. And it feels quite nice because when you start, you feel like you're going kind of easy. And then it only starts to feel hard at the end, just kind of how your energy systems are working. This parabolic pacing strategy, that's kind of, you start out pretty quick, then you have a bit of a lull at the end, and then you finish really, really strong.
Yeah, right. And so what are most people doing though in this sense? Like when you're looking at this and you're looking at your athletes, what are they doing?
Most people are just blowing up.
Yeah, blowing up hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Positive. It's not like the best name for it. Positive pacing.
Right. It's
Yeah.
called positive because your actual pace, like the speed that you're going, is in or the time it takes to
The
go a
time it
distance
takes. Yeah.
is increasing as you go. So there's lots of ways to talk about your output, because it can be, um, you know, minutes it takes to cover a K, or power output. So they kind of overlap. So the names don't always make perfect sense.
And in general sense, what do you think is best? Even or negative? Or so first of all, positive pretty much sucks. Like it's pretty much not going to work
No.
90 to 95% of the time, because when you're dicing with death and trying to hold a pace that your body isn't capable of, which is going to result in you slowing down, definitely, then the rate at which you slow down is unknown, and so you sort of got to try and guess how much you're going to slow down
Yeah.
across the time. That's if you have actually incorporated a positive pacing strategy. Otherwise, you're just going too hard. The parabolic, it may work depending on course dependencies, but when we're really looking at it, any advice I'm giving is even to negative. Is that the same?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Especially when it's a sport where there's some sort of skill involved. Especially like mountain biking, and I deal mostly with mountain bikers. When they go out really, really hard and they get cross-eyed, their skills start to deteriorate. And we know that skill is super important in mountain biking. So, and mountain biking's kind of tough because you have to compete. It's like against other people, and people can be block you and stuff. But
So mountain biking is going to be more parabolic because
yeah,
you've got that
probably right.
start.
Yeah,
You've got that big start where you have to incorporate. It's just the race. It's like triathlon. When I'm dealing with swimmers, we train for the start. We train for that first buoy, that 200 meters. Like it's going to be harder than the majority of the race.
yeah, yeah, kind of. But like, it doesn't need. You don't want to go hard for a really long time because you have so much race left. So you kind of just need to stay out of trouble in the beginning, and not get too far back, really. And it's about kind of minimizing your losses, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, exactly. But then if so, we're looking at even and negative. Um, I guess it's hard to to know first of all exactly, like with in running anyway, it's very hard to know what you're going to be outputting. you know, for a bike, you can quite easily, if you go to Power Meter, go, okay, within sort of 10 watts of my threshold or whatever number you've got, I'm going to be going too easy or too hard. So it's a lot easier to even pace or even negative pace. But with running, when you've got the conditions and undulations and wind and stuff, you go, well, you could easily lose 30 seconds per kilometer, and then and then the stride running Power Meter can potentially help, but with wind, it's still not that effective.
Yeah, they're not quite there yet, are they?
Almost, but it takes a lot. It takes quite a bit of knowledge to actually understand the data you're getting from it, because it's so different to like a crank-based cycling one.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
we digress. The pacing strategies. Normally, I'm gonna recommend a conservative start, which is the negative. So, and why I wanted to do this now is because we've got the Tarawera Ultra, my hometown
Oh, okay.
road
Okay,
rower,
that's coming up.
on Saturday. Yeah, 2 days from now. And I was running through it. My wife, Emma O'Connor, she's doing it. And we went and ran the start of the course, and it's just so flowy and nice running, even trails, like a little bit of undulations. But you're at the point in the race, it's at the beginning where you can just run the ups, you know, charge on the downs. But if you're able to, we were saying, like, you could easily just speed up 30 seconds because it's just per kilometer, because it just feels so easy. Like you've trained for 100 Ks and you're 20 Ks into the race. But then we were like looking at the numbers, and if you could just slow down, say you're running 6-minute Ks, and you can slow down to like a 7-minute K, that's going to allow you to run versus walk at the end at like 80 or 90 kilometer mark.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so that's, although like I consider it a negative pacing, you're probably actually even pacing, because by the amount of effort you're having to put out at kilometer 90 to 100 is so large, but then the pace is probably as even as you were running at the start, which felt so incredibly easy.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's the thing about even pacing. Like, you're gonna start, and it's gonna feel just way too easy.
Actually,
but even at the same pace.
Draw that on here somewhere, if the screen lets me, which I don't think it's going to.
Yeah, well,
Right.
I mean, I think it's easy to understand. Like, if you just think about starting a race and just going easier than you think you should go, and then you finish at the same exact pace. Actually, by the end, you're going to feel like you're going really, really hard. But it's not like your pace has dropped off, which is probably a good thing.
And that's why positive, or this parabola here, is what most people end up doing in endurance sport. You've trained, you've tapered. Especially if it's your A race, you come in and you just think, this is what I'm doing. You know, this is my day. I'm actually feeling so good. I can step a level up.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you ruin your race because you haven't taken into account an actual pacing strategy.
Yeah.
Or for some reason you've thought, I can go with this guy or girl today.
Look, it's so hard to do, like, mentally, to make yourself like pace evenly or pace negatively. It's like one of the hardest things mentally to do, unless you're really, really, really confident and you know exactly what you can do. Like, I talk about pacing strategies all the time, and we had a race like 2 weeks ago, and I went out way too hard.
Yeah, I did the same thing. Like, it was like way too hot. We had a local 5K run, and I went with the guys definitely faster than me, and I ran with them. It's too hot. Like, I suffer in the heat, and I blew up.
Yeah. So how did you feel for the rest of the event? Like, you feel horrible. Like, after
but it's also, you feel, and the longer it is, the bigger races I've blown up in, the worse you feel for the days following.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you dug way too deep. Like this 5K, Thursday night 5K, it's just like a matter of speed, tempo, effort, like just race simulation kind of stuff. And I've just wrecked myself because I went out too hard and then had to hold on so I didn't completely embarrass myself.
Yeah, that's right. And the differences between going out too hard and going out evenly are actually really, really small. and the gains that you can make early on, you really need to weigh that against what you could potentially gain later on by pacing properly, right? So
Yeah,
if you
we
start at
did that. The following race, like this is why like weekly tests or races, time trials and stuff is so good. I was like, I'm going slow, and then I won it that night because I was able to surge on the other dudes and close like the fastest of the closing kilometers.
yeah,
So, and I
yeah,
felt great and was able to cool down. Whereas the other night before, man, I was like, I'm just gonna go home.
yeah, yeah. Just don't say anything to anyone. Just leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Classic. Yeah, yeah. But you know that you could have gone 10 seconds faster, you know, per K early on, and that could have been the difference between you blowing up and not blowing up. And you
It
don't
was it.
actually.
Like it wasn't huge the difference. I went so the first K normally for a 5K for me should be like I don't know 310 to 320 depending on the course. And I went out at 3 and
Why?
tried to hold it like rather than going I should slow down. Which if we'd taken the maths of it, I should have slowed down from a 3-minute K to a 3:30. And I know a 3:30 is like very well within my means, and that would have been enough to then get back on track. But instead, I slowed to like a 3:17 or like a half-ass, and now I have no choice in the matter. I'm slowing down,
Yeah, yeah,
and my effort is like exponential.
yeah,
Um, Whereas, and so that, like you say, if you have when you say skill-based stuff, this also applies to ultras and ultra trails because not only do you have to maintain your awareness on the track so you don't trip over, you also got to, am I drinking? Am I eating? What's my nutrition like? Where am I going on the course? That stuff's just so important. If you've cooked your biscuits before
yeah, yeah.
way, where do you go from there? It's not going to be enjoyable either.
No. So I did an interesting test with the local mountain bike club, and I took the kids out and split them into two groups, right? And we did the short little like 1 minute mountain bike time trial, and they did it 2 times.
Yeah,
I kind of did a little experiment, right? Did it kind of randomly, and the first time they did the lap, they did it all out, right? Just 1 minute, they came back, did the lap. As soon as they got back, they had some maths problems to do, and they ran through them. They were quite simple, like 10 of them, and I gave
yeah,
them their time when they were done with the maths problems.
yeah,
Okay, and then I had them go out again. Of course, it was randomized, right? Proper experiment, and I told them to do it at 80%. So they went out, they did it at 80%, came back, did the maths problems, and the times were actually the same, because they were able to get back and concentrate better on doing the maths problems.
yeah.
So I just really wanted to show them a bit about pacing, and mountain bikers are all pretty bad at it. They just all blow up. And when you have a skill to do, you don't really want to be blowing up. And the same for trail running, especially when your technique is super important for actually going fast.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll do this discussion in a different episode. But that was the one of the principles behind my run walk experiment. Like I walked in a marathon, came second, and ran 2 hours 45 minutes. Like it was able to it was able to create an environment in which pacing was the main key factor.
Yeah,
So almost everyone, goes out in a marathon endurance race too hard, like we showed in that graph. So I was saying if you use a walking break to then draw your pace back down to the natural average, it also gives you like a cue, like your math problem. It's like,
yeah,
oh wait a minute, systems check. Okay,
yeah. And it gives you
I'm
a chance
actually
to
getting
fuel.
too hot, and it's like everything I'm doing is not in line with what I said. But if you're just on the charge, like me in that 5K or you in your your mountain bike race,
Yeah,
you're like, nah, I've committed.
yeah, yeah. Because you look silly if you start to slow down early on. You're like, oh, I better get out of the way of these people so I don't, look silly when I blow up. But if you actually can slow down a little bit, you really give yourself a chance to fuel properly as well. And
That was part of
you're,
the run walk as well. I walked aid stations, and like you're not losing time. That's what a lot of people think, especially if you are able to coast on the bike, or so not pedal on the downs, um, or walk the aid stations or walk the ups. the time in which you're still moving forward versus effort and non-effort is actually quite small. Like
Mm,
it's not drastic. Like if you only do it for a minute, like I was walking for a minute out of 20 minutes,
yeah. It's
percentage
not like you're
wise.
laying down. You're not laying down on the
But
ground
if you
throwing a ball.
stop, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And this is part of the other side of pacing. You know, if you're so screwed, especially in ultras or in mountain biking, you fall off, like you've stopped. Now you're losing time,
Yeah.
100%. Like that
Yeah.
time, you're not
Yeah.
gaining. It's
No.
just completely
I
lost.
always say you're not going very fast if you're laying in the dirt, because you're not. Even if you roll, you have to go back and get your bike.
Yeah,
So like,
it's
yeah, just stay on. But like, pacing's one thing, and like it's all good. But when we're in races, like we're there to win, right?
yeah, yeah. And I guess there's maybe two aspects. Like there's the racing aspect of pacing, and then there's time trials. Like a time trial is how a majority of people are going to be executing an endurance event. It's just merely you versus the clock.
Yeah.
So in that sense, even or negative pacing strategy is going to be 100% the best. But then if you're at the front of the race and someone surges, and maybe there's a drafting effect, maybe you're on the trails and mountain biking or running, and they disappear. Now you have no idea. You have no time checks.
Mhm.
Are they now a minute ahead or 30 seconds? Like it can be a lot more advantageous for you to go above your effort or drafting
Yeah.
to get on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I think like drafting is probably, and like that's probably a whole nother talk in itself, is drafting. But yeah, like you need to kind of weigh, like an attack happens, right? And you need to think like this fast what you're going to do. Like you might have this pacing strategy in mind, but you need to determine really really quickly what you're going to do if you're going to go with it. And if you can draft, it might be worth going with it. If you need to redline and you're going to blow up, um, yeah, it might not be the best way, but that one, that's a hard call to make.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
often use like with the athletes I work with, we have like red flag kind of upper limits and things, where because these guys like and girls when it's at the front of the race and it's really you don't know if the other person is just fluffing. Like I'm just throwing this attack out there just to see where you stand. So you got to go. It's when they're holding for 2 minutes and the end of the climb's 5 minutes away and you're way above your threshold. It's like don't bother. You'll get them later. Otherwise, they were the stronger athlete on the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Like
usually,
if and depends like where. Obviously, once you're down to the last 10% or whatever of the race, you got to
you have to.
yeah
You just have to. It depends when the attacks start happening. Like if an attack happens on like in the first like 10% of the race, or like the first 1 minute of the race, that's not an attack. That's just someone being either silly or just being way better than you. And you need to be careful. But if it's
Yeah, the
happening at the
the
end,
mathematics of it is like is they always come back.
yeah, yeah, unless they're that much better, right? Like unless they're on a totally different level, which would be rare, really, if you're racing your peers.
Yep.
But at the end, you just actually need to go with it if you want to win. You just have to, and you need
Yeah.
to hope. Like you need to. That's why you need to have your pacing strategy dialed early on, so that way you can go with the attacks later on. And if you're in the
But that's
position,
negative. It's still negative pacing, isn't it? Like you've got enough at the
yeah,
end to speed up.
yeah, yeah, right. You have that much more power that you can put out there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Yeah. So if you're lucky enough to be in control, like maybe that's something you can do a bit of blocking, kind of, you know, um, suffer a little bit more, like, play it. You can start to play mind games if you're in control.
Yeah. That's we've worked on that as well. It's a very very like a small percentage of athletes get to experience it, but it's a very hard position to be in control of the race, where do you exert over your abilities because they are further beyond their abilities in
Mm,
doing it, but maybe they're not. Or do
Yeah.
you just slow down because you know I've got this? I have the fastest close in the race
Yeah.
out of all these guys and girls. Like I'll finish it.
Yeah. It comes down to confidence in what
Yeah,
you can do. You
yeah, and
need to know what you
experience.
can do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably long enough. What do you close out with some recommendations for people
Uh,
in pacing?
yeah. So
Like,
my,
what do you? It's just start slow. Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's
Just try
but
it.
know your limits. So you got to go back a couple steps, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before your big event, and do some kind of test set where you know like these are. I've got a few watts, a few seconds per kilometer, a few seconds per 100 meter in the swim to play with here. But otherwise, I'm not. I
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't
Yeah.
go fast in that.
Practice. Like just next event in a B event or a C event, like one that's not super important, you need to just try a pacing strategy. Like just try
Yeah.
going out easy and just see what happens. It'll
Yes.
probably work out for you, right?
Yeah. I have a saying that if you finish the race and you think and you're wrecked, like you did your best effort, and you think to yourself, ah, I could have gone a bit harder. That's perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect pacing. Like you wrecked yourself. At the finish, you were done, but then like 10 minutes later, you feel good. Like, that was perfect pacing.
Yeah, yeah.
If
You
you were
always got to
on,
empty the tank, right? At the end.
yeah, but it's not like you are just running on like the sediment in the bottom of your petrol tank when you have to, drag yourself through those last 10 to 20 minutes or 10 to 20 kilometers if you're talking
Yeah.
about an ultra. um it's you stand to lose so much by starting too hard, and you can gain or maintain by just chilling out a little bit.
Yeah,
um
definitely.
so do it, try it.
Yep, just give it a try. That's it.
Your next local race, or even like power test or something,
Yeah,
your time trial, just try, I'm going to go below what I know I can do and see how you finish.
yeah.
Yeah, sweet, Matt. All right.
Cool. All right, well,
Appreciate your time. Peace out, everybody. All right. Stop stream.